There's a very famous illusion that finds its origins in Germany in the late 1800s and was picked up by a British cartoonist, William Eli Hill, in the early 1900s. In this illusion, some people look at this picture and they very quickly discern an older looking woman, while others look at the picture and they only pick up a younger looking woman. This illusion is so complex that very often, after a first impression is made, it's very difficult for the observer to see the other perspective and to find the other image. And they often have to turn to a friend who did pick up the opposite and ask them, where are the signs and the indications to see this other person? Hill called this illusion the wife and the mother-in-law just for laughs. Perspectives are so powerful, perhaps they could explain something that's going on in this week's Parshat with the spies. Rabbi Binyamin Yudin, the Rav of Kehillah Shomrei Torah in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and I heard this from him on his broadcast of JM in the AM, asked, what's happening with the spies? These weren't just regular Jews. They weren't your run-in-the-mill kind of people, but rather, as Rashi says, they were Anashim Chashuvim. They were important. They were leaders of this great generation of Jews that left Mitzrayim. So how could it be that when charged with the mission of go to Eretz Yisrael and bring back a report on how we could conquer the land, how could it be that they ultimately led Bnei Yisrael in a rebellion that cost us to wander in the Midbar for 40 years? Rabbi Yudin explained, perhaps perspectives will answer our question. And if we look at the very simple, obvious reading of the Torah, so that will indicate to us where the perspective happens. Moshe calls in the spies before they leave and gives them a list of questions. Here are the things that you are looking for when you go to the land. Was Moshe himself having doubts about how amazing the land was going to be? So Rabbi Yudin says, let's look very closely at the questions. When Moshe says to the spies, go to the land and see, is it good or bad? Go to the land and see, is it fat or lean? Can it produce a lot of grain, a lot of fruits and vegetables, or is it hard to come up with vegetation in this land? Moshe doesn't say to the spies, go look at the land, hatovahi o ra'ah. The Hebrew word for or is aleph vav. He doesn't say o ra'ah, but rather he says im ra'ah aleph mem, which translates as if. Moshe didn't have any doubts that the land was amazing. But Moshe also didn't have any doubts that when you first look at Eretz Yisrael, what they were going to see. Moshe said to the spies, I am telling you right now, you're going to go to the land and you're going to see a people that are strong. You're going to go to a land and you're going to see the land is ra'ah. You're going to go to the land and you're going to see that it can't really produce and support and sustain a great nation like ours. But my challenge for you is not, can you see and can you report back what perspective you're seeing with your eyes, but rather the challenge is hatovahi im ra'ah. Can you see where the good lies, even if the obvious perspective is ra'ah, is bad? Hashmenahi im raza. Can you see that this land can actually produce, even if on the surface it looks like raza? Because up to this point, when Bnei Yisrael interacted with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they saw amazing miracles. A sea split. There were 10 plagues. They were at Har Sinai, and they heard from Hashem himself. But that's not the way that our relationship with Hashem is going to last forever. But rather, Hashem is going to go back to his place of nistar, of being hidden, and our job is to discern and to find godliness and HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself within the world that we're living in. Perspective. Can I look at my world and I see, oh, here's a tree. Oh, here's a beautiful sunrise. Oh, here's an amazing medication. Here's an amazing system for how people can make money. Am I seeing only the surface, or am I realizing that there's really a creator and an organizer that's running his world? Hatovahi, is the land good? Imra'ah, even if and when it's going to look bad. Is the land shmena? Can the land produce? Imra'ah, even if or when it's going to look that's very thin. And in fact, if we look what's going on here in Eretz Yisrael, so all of a sudden, even in this desert land, so Jews are able to produce, through the koach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, able to produce vegetation in ways that were unimaginable before this discovery. It's all about perspectives. Are we looking at the world on the surface, or especially here in Eretz Yisrael, are we looking at the world for the deeper meaning? Are we seeing that it's Iron Dome that's protecting us, or are we seeing that it's really our tefillah, our achdus, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's protecting us? Looking beyond what's happening in the surface. Rabbi Yudin says this explains that the Meraglim weren't Rishayim. They weren't wicked. They weren't trying to sabotage purposely what Bnei Yisrael was striving for. They didn't have selfish motives in mind, but rather the opposite. They were trying to protect Bnei Yisrael. And they came back and reported, scary things are happening there, are we ready? And it could be that Bnei Yisrael weren't ready for this kind of relationship with Hashem yet, and thus they had to go back to the desert, where they were weaned off the man, weaned off the be'er, and getting ready for a life where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where the routine would be seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu only via the nature, only via the teva, in things that we would see as regular life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us this vision to be able to look beyond our initial perspective and our initial analysis, but rather to find His hand and His handiwork behind everything that's happening in our lives. Have a great Shabbos.